group under which Financial Securities Exchange fall. We are the providers of an alternative trading platform registered by Securities and Exchange Commission as a securities exchange. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tafumane. So the first question that we have for you is, tell us more about the ZMX. What is it? A lot of people just know it's a commodities exchange, but you know, as some people, even with like the ZSE, people don't even know what it is really and what happens there. So just explain to everyone what the ZMX is.
Okay, ZMX is short for Zimbabwe Mercantile Exchange. Zimbabwe Mercantile Exchange has been set up as a PPP, partnership between the private sector and the government of Zimbabwe. The idea is to set it up as a provider of an organized marketplace that will facilitate the trading of commodities through either spot markets or either spot contracts or derivatives contracts in future. For the spot market, the ZMX will be anchored on a warehouse receipt system, which is governed by the Warehouse Receipt Act as well as warehouse receipt regulations that recognizes the issuance of warehouse receipts by certified warehouse operators, which are issued against storage of commodities by producers. And once producers have had their warehouse commodities stored with warehouse operators, they are then lawfully issued with warehouse receipts. And when they are holding the warehouse receipts, they will decide when they would want to go onto the markets to either dispose of all or part of their commodities or secure finance against the security of the products. So this is where ZMX comes in to provide the infrastructure and the platform by which those warehouse receipt issuances are undertaken, as well as facilitating the trading between the buyers and sellers of the commodities, as well as the price discovery mechanism that ensues. So in a nutshell, that's what Zimbabwe Mercantile Exchange is all about.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tafumane. So the next question is, what does FinSec as an organization bring to this initiative? We know that it's a collaboration between the government and private players like FinSec, CBZ and TSO. So where does FinSec play? What's the role of FinSec in this ZMX?
As you would know, FinSec, which is short for Financial Securities Exchange, came about to fulfill the requirements or to fulfill a gap in terms of alternative products that will be tradable on an organized exchange. So by its nature as an alternative trading platform, FinSec set out to come up with solutions that speak to alternative products, alternative markets, and alternative trading solutions. It is duly licensed by SEC, as I have mentioned, under the Securities Act, and FinSec focuses largely on innovative technologies, innovative solutions anchored on technology, and it has demonstrated technology capabilities in delivering solutions that speak to core trading activities, as well as access channels for various citizens to be able to seamlessly reach various markets. As an example, FinSec brought in such innovations as C-Trade and Gem Portal, meant to provide or to facilitate access to marketplaces. So it is with the same capabilities that we felt that together with our partners, these platforms and technologies would also make a difference in terms of our agricultural commodity marketplaces by providing, firstly, the technologies required, the platforms required, and then providing access channels to enable farmers stock producers, and any other participant to access markets virtually. So what we are bringing in is the experience and the expertise in terms of setting up similar platforms, as well as some international exposure that we have also managed to get in terms of being involved in related activities. An exchange additionally brings in risk management tools to de-risk activities within marketplaces. So FinSec is not bringing anything new in terms of the trading of commodities. They are always being traded all the time. But what it is doing is to bring in standardization of contracts, be they spot contracts or the derivatives contracts, and having them centralized and having them de-risked, so that more and more players can come in and participate in a well-structured, organized marketplace.
Okay, thank you for that comprehensive response. So maybe let me go on to Mr. Neta. There's still some questions that we have, but let's just diversify into the panel. So Mr. Neta, before we begin with you, perhaps just give us a brief introduction about who you are and what you do.
Thank you, Tafara. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Chipo Neta. I'm a managing executive with National Foods. National Foods has 5 divisions, and I'm the managing executive for the maize division. Thank you, Tafara.
Okay, thank you. So, does Nat Foods play any role in driving the ZMX as we know it? Is there a role that Nat Foods has been or is supposed to play?
Thank you, Tafara. National Foods is a very big interested party. The commodity exchange, amongst other services, will trade grain, which forms our raw material base. And these grains include soybeans, wheat, maize, and others. And for functionality of the exchange, there has to be a twinning arrangement where we have the primary producers selling their produce and the agro processors such as us being the buyers and to provide the offtake platform for the products. We are the end users of these grains, and therefore we have an option to buy directly from the exchange, or we'll procure via our third-party traders to secure the product. And agro-processors, being the ultimate end user, we set the prices for the commodities based or guided by import parity parameters and any other government interventions in terms of pricing and pricing controls. For example, import parity may be at $2 per ton, but if for some reason the government sells the commodity to the millers at a subsidized price of, say, $260 ex NGMD depot, then it means the 260 becomes by default the ruling price on the exchange.
Okay.
That's how we see ourselves playing a role on the exchange.
Okay, and now I go back to Mr. Tafumane. So given what Mr. Neta has talked about as being a major player in the market, how does the ZMX ensure standardization of the commodities that are in the market or that will be traded on the Zimbabwe Mercantile Exchange?
So to start with, the standards are enforced by a combination of both what the law provides for, as well as the design of the exchange itself and the measures that were put together when designing the exchange. So to begin with, the Warehouse Receipt Act, as well as the Warehouse Receipt Regulations, they speak to the expected standards to start with, of the infrastructure, that is the warehouse management itself, how the warehouses are designed, structured, and all that. They have to meet certain minimum standards. And these warehouses are subjected to very serious due diligence and inspections by the authority that has been appointed by law. And once those warehouses are certified, they are required now to adhere to fair grading standards. And these grading standards are based on two major aspects. Firstly, the law recognizes the legal grading standards required for several commodities, but also there are international best practice in terms of standardization. On top of that, the exchange itself has put together a framework by which warehouse operators will be compelled to adhere to the standards that would have been agreed on. And this will be enforced by the use of experts in quality standards. So each warehouse operator will be required to work with certified quality inspectors who are going to ensure that the warehouse operators stick to the agreed standards and even be able to obtain samples that will be used to ensure that dispute resolution on standards down the line, down the road, are also enforced. So there is a vast effort for ensure that best practice that's adhered.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tafumane. And just an additional question. So there are many other people who are in this webinar. Some of them, there are people who want to invest in this commodities exchange, not because they are manufacturers like maybe National Foods or millers, but purely because they want to diversify their portfolios beyond just stocks. So who can participate on the Zimbabwe Mercantile Exchange? We're looking at the farmers, local and foreign ZSC and FinSec investors, all those people. So who can participate and who cannot participate?
Thank you. So we have a lot of stakeholders that have been taken care of in the design of the exchange. Obviously, producers come first because they are the ones that will provide the primary liquidity required by the exchange. We then have other participants who either intermediate or provide the base on which these commodities can be safely traded. So warehouse operators will come in with their infrastructure, and the law recognizes the two as separate, both the physical infrastructure that can be admitted onto the exchange, as well as the operational expertise that will be required. Then we have lenders, that is the banks and microfinance entities who should also come in to provide liquidity and funding to farmers. We have collateral managers. They have their own category of participation, as well as quality inspectors. We'll be bringing on board custodian banks who will ensure that who facilitate the settlement of transactions when these contracts are traded. We are bringing on board market makers, and I think this is where even investors can come in and provide the liquidity required. And then intermediaries such as commodity traders who have expertise in trading. So to answer your question in a nutshell, the design and the rules put together have various categories of participants, which is a wide list of participants that can come in. Now, specifically to you and me, who may not have any plot in terms of farming and all that, as long as anyone fulfills the requirements, the registration requirements that will be required by both the exchange and the regulatory authority, AMA, once they have been vetted and KYC'd, they can come in and take positions. Now, the market as it develops, it will have two distinct marketplaces or categories. There's one for the spot market, which is largely skewed to transacting or trading in the physical commodities. And there will then be, as we go, derivatives markets that will be looking at futures and option contracts. So to your question, in terms of investors on the stock exchange and all that, they will be able to take part either on the spot market, which may not be very ideal for investors because these contracts have a short span, which is tied to the durability of the commodity, or they can go on to the actual securities, that is futures and derivatives contracts.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tafumane. So let me just go on to the other panelists, just to have a variety of voices in here. Mr. Odoteye, if you could kindly just give us a brief introduction and let everyone know who you are.
Good afternoon, and thank you very much, Tafara. My name is Derek Odoteye. I'm Group CEO of TSL Limited, and it's a company that's listed on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Odoteye. So you mentioned you're the CEO of TSL, and TSL is also part of the private strategic players that are behind this initiative. So what does TSL bring into this project?
Thank you for that question. So to give you a sense of who TSL is, if you look at the agricultural value chain from seed to shelf, we've estimated that there are about 24 different points along that value chain. And this has to do with the provision of inputs, the farming, the access to market, the processing side of things, all the way through to when you see an agro-commodity on your plate. And of those 24 touch points, TSL handles at least 20 of those touch points. So what we do as a company is we move agriculture on platforms. So to give you a sense of what we are doing as part of this commodities exchange, when it comes to the pre-planting stage, we provide inputs, which is your fertilizers, your chemicals. We provide farmers with agronomy support. We give them access to markets. We give them access to information, which allows them to increase their yields, to be able to produce a better commodity. And we also give them access to financing through this commodities exchange. And a lot of losses that farmers experience actually happens at the post-harvest stage. So when it comes to post-harvest, farmers generally don't have the kind of world-class warehousing facility that reduces their loss. And post-harvest losses are about 30% of all the losses that farmers experience. They also struggle with getting their produce to market. And we have an end-to-end logistics solution that allows us to create a network of transporters that can help farmers get their produce to market. The commodities exchange gives farmers access to pricing. There's decentralized points which allow aggregation of produce, and that added level of convenience makes a big difference to the ordinary farmer. So really, as an organization, we are keen on helping to create sustainable, profitable farmers. And this involves helping with the input side of things, with the logistics side of things, and with adequately investing in the infrastructure that allows them to get to market.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Odoteye. And he talked about, just produce, and, we haven't really broken down into which produce we are talking about. So if you could just kindly tell us which produce will be traded on the Zimbabwe Mercantile Exchange.
So the system is needing anything that is agricultural produce. So we could handle the grains, which is, your maize, your wheat, your soya. We can handle horticultural produce, including all those that need to go through cold chain. We can handle livestock. So the important thing is, how do we pace it? Because unlike equities, you need a physical infrastructure that works properly to ensure that you don't lose the commodity along the way. So we've decided that we're going to start off with the soybean and with maize to the extent that that is possible. And then we'll continue growing and adding various other produce as we expand the full range of capabilities in the commodities exchange.
Okay. Thank you. So this exchange is going to, well, I'm assuming, but I stand corrected, it's going to bring about some sort of price discovery among commodities. How will this affect the traditional way of, trading and exchange, such as, your contract farming, that structure of moving commodities around? How does this exchange change all that, or how does it reinvent the wheel, if so to speak?
So price discovery is critical for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons is that it determines the viability of the farmer. If you know what prices you're able to expect on the produce that you're making, and if you can access markets that give you the best price or allow you to access the market at the right time for you to get the best price, it allows for you to grow. So the contract model that we've had has been a way of supplementing the viability of farmers and enabling them to access financing that allows them to produce. The commodities exchange, however, changes that marginally, because what it does is allow financial institutions to be able to have clear visibility of who is producing what, where they're producing it, and the kind of financial support that they need. Additionally, it comes in that once you've produced your commodity, you're actually able to borrow against it from the financial sector because your commodity can be collateralized. So the way we is that providing a more organized, more structured marketplace that gives confidence to the various players in the value chain. It gives confidence to the farmers, to the financiers, to the traders, and allows each of the members or participants on that exchange to focus on what their core business is, thereby delivering real value to the entire value chain.
Okay, thank you. I would also like to introduce another panelist, Mr. Nyazema. Mr. Nyazema, if you could you just tell us a bit about who you are and what you do?
Hello, thanks very much, Chairman. Good afternoon, all who managed to join us this afternoon. My name is Lawrence Nyazema. I'm the Wholesale Banking Director for CBZ Bank. CBZ Bank is part of CBZ Holdings. It's the largest group of financial service providers in this country. Like TSL, listed on the Zimbabwe Stock Exchange. Within CBZ Holdings, we are involved or heavily involved in the agricultural financing space. Some of those who joined us today may be aware that CBZ Holdings, through a subsidiary called CBZ Agro Yield, is financing the largest contract growing scheme for raw crops in the country. So when it comes to your maize, when it comes to soya, to wheat, CBZ Agro Yield is financing that. On the banking side, we are involved in all lending activities that are related to agriculture, be it horticulture, raw cropping, the export sector, what is used for local consumption. Part of our interest as a group is to see an orderly market when it comes to agricultural produce. From financing agriculture, we would find that most of the off-takers of agricultural produce are our clients. Most of the light manufacturers who convert the agricultural raw materials either into food or into clothes are also clients of ours. And what we have seen over a period of time is you do not always have an orderly market when it comes to agricultural produce. So by coming together with TSL, the government of Zimbabwe, and FinSec, our endeavor is to make sure that there's orderliness, there is price discovery that has already been talked about. And more importantly, once we have introduced warehouse receipts, we see ourselves being a significant warehouse receipt financier, in that the warehouse receipts become security that we can rely on as a financial institution to give working capital facilities, mostly to farmers and other agricultural sector players. So to summarize with regards to our role, because we are one of the 4 partners, we are coming in as a shareholder, which means we are providing capital into the setting up of ZMX alongside our partners. We see ourselves alongside other financial institutions playing a role of a custodian for the security and instruments that will be traded on the exchange. We see ourselves again alongside other banks in the country playing the role of a settlement bank. And like I have highlighted before, we also see ourselves taking advantage of instruments that would have been introduced to get those as security and finance the agricultural sector. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nyazema. We really appreciate that. So you've unpacked, the role of CBZ being the bridge between funding and farmers for those that cannot afford the capital. What I would want to know is what support, let's talk about international technical partners out there that are available to the Zimbabwe Mercantile Exchange, to support this exchange and sort of boost confidence in the exchange itself, if there are any.
They are there. I will hand over to Colin, who will give us a comprehensive list of technical support experts that we have been working with even before the project was launched. So, Colin, you can come in.
Thank you, Lawrence. Yes, so this initiative is receiving a lot of support. In terms of the partnership, there's the private sector and the government. There's also the development institution also come on board. FAO, Food and Agricultural Organization, has been supporting this initiative heavily in partnership with IAPRI, a policy think tank, through whom a lot of policy proposals and interventions have been coming in and working as the bridge between us in the private sector and the government to facilitate input into both policy and as well as statutes. And you'll probably find that this initiative has found its way into the NDS, National Development Strategy, as well as it has also been covered in our budgets. The support also included supporting both financially and technically the pilot program that has been, that we have been engaged in. And then in addition to that, we have the World Bank that has also come in to support this initiative. The World Bank is coming in with technical assistance, and they have been doing a lot of capacity building, a lot of training. Workshops have been held that include various market participants, including banks, the exchange operators themselves, ourselves, who have been receiving extensive training from World Bank appointed and funded with expertise in similar commodity exchanges across the world. This support will also extend to the actual ultimate beneficiaries of this initiative, that is our producers, our farmers. A program has already been put in place to not only raise awareness, but also to educate our people in terms of how best to utilize this platform. On top of that, when it comes to the quality standards, quality inspectors, collateral management, we are also engaging with international parties that have always been working in this country, but with specific individual participants. So yes, there's quite a bit of international support for this initiative.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tafumane, for that. I just want to unpack a bit more on the producer's side of things. So allow me to bring back Mr. Neta for this. So this exchange is supposed to oil the system of commodities exchange in Zimbabwe. Given that there's going to be some sort of price discovery, how will it affect, the production side of things for manufacturers, considering that Zimbabwe is quite a comprehensively agriculturally centered economy, and supporting the agriculture manufacturers will be key in growing the economy. So how do you see this exchange assisting the performance or the income statements of manufacturers in Zimbabwe?
Thank you, Tafara. The setting up of the exchange, we don't expect it to have a negative impact on activities such as contract farming, which we support. Instead, we expect it to have a positive impact through price discovery and transparency in the derivation of pricing. And it will also help us plan our lives, because we can now budget and plan, knowing and forecasting what our raw material could be from our production, from our farmers, and what prices would then work based on the market forces. So we really expect it to move us into the world of market forces, where we can now also compete with the regional markets. Again, the launch of the exchange, we also expect it to remove the impact of GMB, who has been the sole buyer of the grains. And therefore, we expect GMB or government to now have a minimum impact on the markets, thereby minimizing the market distortions and move to market forces. And that will help the processors become competitive in the region and amongst ourselves.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Neta. And then I'll introduce our last panelist, Mr. Matsika. So we've been hearing about this amazing exchange that's coming online very soon. But many other people want to know maybe the nitty-gritties of how really to tap into this exchange and be part of the experience. So, Mr. Matsika, please just introduce yourself, and then just let us know how market intermediaries their role in this upcoming ZMX.
So thank you very much, Tafara. Yes, I'm Batnai Matsika, and I'm the head of research here at Morgan & Co. So yeah, with regards to your question, I think the exchange opens up, a lot of opportunity for different participants. So first, of course, we have the producers, and I think we've covered the topic of price discovery, which is quite key if you are actually involved in production and things like that. So that's a major advantage if you're then looking at things around competitiveness and things like that. But one thing that we like about the whole idea is that it's going to evolve. As Colin is actually indicated, that we are looking at a futures market for commodity. And just looking at our financial markets, I think it opens up, investment options for investors out there. I think one issue or one problem that we've seen over the past years was that investors in Zimbabwe have very limited options. It's either they're playing on the equities market or they are probably on the money market where yields are not very attractive. So really playing in the commodity space deepens our markets. It provides opportunity for portfolio diversification, even for the institutional investors. So really, it's a good development. We expect to see traders coming in and even speculators, of course, which sort of helps in terms of liquidity and also price discovery. And for market intermediaries, people like us who are in the investment banking space, I think there's a lot of scope for us to come in on the research side, because we're dealing with commodities. We can offer products, research products in the commodity space, because most of these commodities are also traded globally, and there's need to track developments in terms of supply, global demand, and things like that. So that's another area where intermediaries can also play, and also just in technical areas around hedging, because what you want to do with an exchange like this, is if you're playing on the futures market, is to hedge. And of course, it requires some technical expertise, and it opens up the opportunity for advisory services at the same time. So we're quite excited from intermediate perspective to say that this is going to open up the opportunity. But definitely, a lot of players out there will benefit, whether you're a producer or you're just an investor on the markets. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Matsika, for the insights. So I think we have exhausted just the basic questions that I had, and some questions that are starting to come in from the chats. So let me just get onto the chats. But before I do, I just want to just have more insights from Mr. Nyazema. I think there might be a bit more that we might have missed. So my question to Mr. Nyazema is with regards to the farmers. To what extent do they know the changes that are coming in because of this ZMX, and how they're going to transform the traditional way of selling their produce?
Thank you. So given that what we are setting up has not been done in the recent past, there will be need for a massive education campaign. I'm happy to advise that together with the Ministry of Agriculture and Ministry of Finance, road shows have already started and have been done in all the provinces of the country. But that is not enough, because the word must be spread to every corner of the country, every inch of our land, and every farmer must be aware of the enormous power that can be derived from using the exchange. It is common knowledge that our farmers have been taken for a ride for a long time. We believe the exchange will come up with better prices for farmers, and that is simply because they are cutting out a lot of middlemen who are coming in and taking advantage of the desperation that has been there because there hasn't been a formal market. If you were to reduce the situation of our farmer to probably a tomato farmer, the tomato farmer will end up just selling his produce at any price, because he can't spend another day at the markets that are there currently, and he has to go back home and fend for the family and take care of business for the next day. Now, Derek talked about the introduction of horticulture juice later into the scheme. So the same farmer no longer has to sell his tomatoes to a middleman at giveaways. The same farmer will be able to bank his tomatoes and get a warehouse receipt provided they are of the right quality and the cold chain solution has been put in place. And then when the right time comes, the same for maize, soya, that pattern that was always there should not continue to be there. We also believe that the price for off-takers will be improved. That is because we are coming up with better logistics. You actually find a situation, because there was no transparency in the markets, where 30 tons of maize would move from, say, Murewa to Harare. At the same time, another 30 tons of maize would be moving from Harare to the same Murewa, but with different players in the mix. Now, if you are going to be having a central system that manages the logistics of what is coming into a central warehouse, what is going to houses, you significantly reduce the cost of logistics that has been incurred by the agricultural sector over years. So if you take out middlemen, if you improve the logistics, if you give the farmers the right to sell their produce when they want, that will certainly improve their lives. I actually can't wait for the day where we announce that the horticultural produce have been added onto the scheme, in addition to the dry produce, your maize, your soya, and so on. But clearly, you can see the advantages that will accrue to the farmers, and we want them to benefit from what the exchange is bringing. So back your question, Chairman, there is need.
Okay, I think we might have lost Mr. Nyazema, but we'll try to get him back as soon as possible. In the meantime, hello, Mr. Nyazema?
Yes, Chair, I'm back. I was just summarizing to say we, as an exchange, we need to be doing much more. We are happy with the support that we are getting from government in terms of the publicity campaign, but certainly we want every farmer and every off-taker, every producer, every investor to be aware of the exchange and the advantages that it brings. So in summary, we have started, but we need to do much more.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nyazema. And then one last question to the panel. I'll direct this one to Mr. Odoteye. Does ZMX have potential to, to restore Zimbabwe's reputation as the breadbasket of Africa going forward, or when it becomes established? Mr. Odoteye?
Hi, Tafari. Sorry, please, can you repeat the question? You were breaking up.
Okay. I was saying, does ZMX have the potential to restore Zimbabwe to its former glory days as the breadbasket of Africa?
We certainly hope so. Farmers are amongst one of the most industrious groups in our country, and we see them toil from dawn to dusk in order to produce a high quality commodity. But I think that as a marketplace, we've probably failed our farmers to a large degree. If they lose about 30% of what they produce simply because of inadequate storage infrastructure, if they lose additional volumes because they can't access the market, they lose when it comes to pricing because they access the market at the wrong time or are preyed upon by people who come and take their produce for song and then sell it at its right value. There is so much leakage that makes farming uncompetitive. And we believe that with the introduction of this Zimbabwe Commodities Exchange, we will be able to start restoring viability to farmers, which will allow them to progress, to grow produce, not only for self-sufficiency, but also to supply other parts of the continent. So we believe that what is being created here transcends individuals. It transcends even sectors. What it is bringing the entire nation together for the benefit of the nation. And we believe that if it's done with all the effort and support that we're seeing from the different parties, we can actually put Zimbabwe back on the map.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Odotoye. And then to Mr. Neta, does this exchange have the potential to turn, manufacturers in Zimbabwe into net exporters? Vis-a-vis, we've seen companies like National Foods importing things like wheat and maize over the past few years. So, can we see that turning around for Zimbabwe because of this exchange?
So, your question again?
I was saying, does the Zimbabwe Mercantile Exchange have the potential to transform agriculture processing businesses in Zimbabwe into net exporters on a large scale going forward?
Yes, thank you. We see that potential coming through because the setup, we foresee stability in prices. And we will also foresee improved output from the farmers. And therefore, we haven't been competitive in the region because we have been depending primarily 90% of our raw materials was coming from imports. Therefore, it was making us less competitive. Now, given that we can produce locally and value add, we foresee our exports really growing.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yes, yeah. And also, as we see more volumes of product being traded on the commodity exchange, it will also bring stability on the exchange itself.
All right, thank you.
Yes.
Just to confirm with Mr. Tafumane, so the ZMX will be a ZWL exchange and not a US dollar denominated exchange, right?
So the exchange itself, in terms of the way it is structured, it is capable of trading multiple currencies. So we've designed it given how our situation has been panning out in the past for it to be nimble enough to adopt to policies of the day. So to answer your question, it will be trading in the currency legal sort of tender that is allowed on the exchange at the time. There are certain representations that have been made, of course, given the feedback that keeps coming back from the farmers, but that's part of the policymakers' input into this partnership, as their role is to inform policy. But technically, it is capable of any currency.
Thank you, Mr. Tafumane. And now I'll go into the questions that have been asked in the chat. So this one is from Thomas. He says, has the exchange obtained regulatory approval from the government to come in and compete with the likes of GMB? I think I'll give this question to Mr. Tafumane. Just, I'm sure you'd answered this, but maybe the person wasn't in when you answered the question.
Yes, so the regulatory matters are informed by the and the exchange has complied with the relevant pieces of legislation. So it is informed by the AMA Act, by the Warehouse Receipt Act, Warehouse Receipt Regulations, and all that. And it is not replacing or duplicating what the GMB does. It is commenting and be a part of the ownership of the role that they can also play in the exchange. But to sum up, yes, the exchange has received the regulatory approvals required. And in fact, what we wait for is now the gazetting of the rules of the exchange themselves, which is being undertaken by the government also.
Okay. And then there's another question. I will direct this to Mr. Odotoye. Someone is asking, How is this different from the current tobacco auction floors? Or is it just an addition of other farming produce?
I think that's a good question. So the tobacco auction floors was probably one of the more organized systems of marketing agricultural produce. But the auction floors themselves are not based on a platform such as being created through ZMX. That platform is a platform that links various market participants, including investors, financiers, etc. So the ZMX platform is a lot broader and gives access to both local and international participants, which is more advanced than what we're currently experiencing on the auction floors. So it provides that structure that exists on the auction floors, but then takes it to a new level as far as spot markets are concerned for various commodities, and then takes it even further by introducing derivative markets for futures and options.
Okay, thank you for the response. There's another question here that says, government has traditionally set prices of strategic grains. Will they allow market forces to determine prices? I'll give this to Mr. Tafumane.
Thank you. So yes, we are all aware of the practice and maybe the intentions. It is to support producers, but at the same time protecting consumers down the line. But of course, that comes with other challenges that we are all aware of. The coming in of the exchange gives us a window through which the two extreme options can converge. That is the need to provide the producer support prices and need to have free market forces coming in. So at the moment, there are proposals that the government is considering to then just say that where this infrastructure, it can be designed in such a manner that we can allow market forces to come in, and the government can just come in to intervene in the case of potential market failure. As you know, free market forces can also invite certain market failures. So there are many tools that can be utilized to achieve that market maker role that has been provided for, which enables government to then intervene only when they need to stabilize prices and also stimulate production. So I can't preempt much, but I can just say there is a discussion around that. Suffice to say, the exchange is designed for a broad range of commodities. And the commodities in question here, when it comes to price controls and all that, there are no more than 2 or 3. And what we have done is to design an exchange that works and that looks at the rest of the commodities, while at the same time offering the government the opportunity to utilize the exchange to address certain market questions that need to be addressed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tafumane. The next question, I will direct this to Mr. Nyazema. So someone is asking, is it going to be mandatory for farmers to bring their produce to the ZMX? If not, what will draw farmers to the ZMX instead of traditional markets like Mbare?
Thanks, Tafara. So it will not be mandatory for farmers to bring their produce to ZMX. A new platform that is being provided and has been put together to provide a service to the producers of agricultural produce as well as the off-takers of agricultural produce. So, like Colin has indicated before, we see ourselves playing a complementary role to the traditional markets that have been there. We are going to be using technology. We are going to be making logistics much, much easier for the farmer. So if I go with the example that has been given, instead of the farmer looking for transport to get his produce to a central market in the middle of the city, the logistical capacity that is being put in place is to say in Murewa, the produce will be taken there. In Urungwe, the maize will be taken there. So firstly, we are bringing simplicity to the whole agricultural trading cycle. We are bringing convenience to the farmers. We are bringing off-takers to a central point who will be competing for a product. One of the biggest advantages has been said and mentioned several times, which is price discovery. So it's a centralized marketplace, and because we're going to be using technology, you can just go onto the website and check what the price of maize is on a particular date and whether it's conducive for you to sell. Again, one of the biggest advantages is to say at the market, although it will be a spot market, it's based on warehouse receipts. So the starting point is for farmers to bank their produce into a warehouse and get title to the produce in the form of the warehouse receipt, which is to say they don't have to immediately sell. They can actually go for days, they can go for months, and only sell when it's conducive for them to do so. So in a high inflation environment, for example, if I was a farmer, I would probably not sell all my produce in a single day. Even if you are to forget about inflation, you look at the price of a commodity like gold, which was probably 1,200 a year or so ago, and went as high as 1,800. It means even in hard currency terms, farmers can take advantage of the price movements that happen by not selling all their produce in a single go, but by strategically bringing it into the market. The 30% or so that Derek talked about in terms of the losses, post-harvest losses that our farmers are subjected to year in, year out, we are also taking that burden away from the farmers. So we are saying you have produced a good crop like is expected of maize and soya and other summer products this year. Come and bank that produce with ZMX, where we provide warehouse facilities and we give you title to what you have banked, and it would have been properly graded. Then at an opportune time, you can sell. We are also saying, in the event that you don't want to sell, but you want to raise financing as a farmer. So assuming you are a maize farmer and you want to immediately establish a wheat crop, you will also have an opportunity to go to the financiers who will be participating on the scheme and raise funding using your warehouse receipt as security. So when we look at the entire ecosystem that is being brought by ZMS, unfortunately, up to now, there hasn't been an equivalent. Obviously, there will be a learning curve for us. We want to improve. If other exchanges do come on board, we will also welcome that because it will make our particular one be even more competitive. But we are basically coming through and providing a bridge for off-takers and producers of agricultural commodities, which has not been available in a similar manner up till now.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Nyazema. I'll direct the next question to Mr. Tafumane. Someone is asking, how long does it take for the farmers to receive their monies?
For transactions that will take place on the ZMX, the settlement cycle is T+3. So from the day that they place an order to sell, they should expect payment within 3 days. This should not be confused with the enforcement of other contracts that will be outside of the exchange. But any transaction taking place within the exchange is subject to T+3 settlement cycle.
Okay, and just a follow-up to that question. Someone is asking, will there be a clearing member involved to guarantee execution?
The exchange itself will be acting as the clearing house. If you look at the way our regulations are designed, the exchange automatically operates as a clearing entity. But for spot market, the clearing, because these are spot markets and we will be operating on a pre-funded basis, we will be delegating part of the clearing function to the custodian banks and settlement banks. So the exchange is taking the central role, but at the same time, it is guaranteeing settlement finality to the custodian banks and settlement banks. So basically what happens is with the integration of the systems, it is such that the custodian bank who is holding custody of the warehouse receipt has got the lien on those receipts on the commodities that is sitting in a commodity in a warehouse, and then the buyer has to fund their position upfront. So basically, when the exchange queries and confirms from the custodian that they have control of both the asset and the cash, then the clearing is done, and then the settlement is then undertaken at the instigation of the completion of the trade. The situation changes slightly when we go to the derivatives. We will then need a specialized clearing infrastructure, which again were put together and the rules have been approved by SEC. Basically, the exchange is the one that will be managing the margin accounts and delegating the actual maintenance of the margin funds with the custodian banks. So the clearing is centralized at the exchange.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tafumane. And I think some of the questions have been answered already while some of the panelists were answering the questions. But I have one more question, and I'll direct this to Mr. Odoteye. How comprehensive is the warehouse infrastructure in Zimbabwe with regards to the ZMX now?
So the warehouse infrastructure at the moment for a lot of the warehouse operators is in decent condition. Some of it is actually world-class in standards. Some of it has needed some work to be done in order to get it to the same level. But this is work that is being done through the plant quarantine department with the Ministry of Agriculture to ensure that the standards of all warehousing for any operators that are permitted to come as warehouse operators on the exchange is of an acceptable standard. What this exchange is going to do is create a network. So there'll be a lot of other players who have that the is as wide as possible and allows for as much convenience as possible to farmers and to traders of agro-commodities. It is also very true that there is work that needs to be done on some of the facilities, but the fact that we've started this journey is going to allow us to do the necessary work to support the infrastructure and support the exchange. But as things stand, we do have participants who are ready, have excellent facilities, and to get the commodities exchange up and running.
Okay, thank you so much. I have one last question. I'll direct this to Mr. Matsika. Does this ZMX have the potential to bring in, or rope in other markets that are outside Zimbabwe? Zimbabwe is quite central in the SADC region, and this exchange could actually provide a platform for even players in Zambia or Mozambique to start, placing their products on the ZMX. Is there that likely possibility, and how can it change the agricultural landscape in Zimbabwe?
I think there's a massive opportunity from an investor perspective. As you know, Zimbabwe is relatively developed in terms of financial markets and things like that. And a lot of investors, even on the traditional markets such as equity, they want exposure in the commodity space. So it would definitely open up the opportunity for participation from an international or foreign investor perspective, given that it will open up the opportunity. So I guess it will happen with time in terms of how the exchange will evolve in terms of the system. But what's also key is just the awareness campaigns, not only from a producer perspective, but even from an investor and market participants perspective. So really, I think there's massive opportunities ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Matsika. Because of time constraints, I'm going to have to end the webinar here. Special thanks to all our panelists, Mr. Colin Tamfumane, Mr. Chiponeta, Mr. Derek Odoteye, Mr. Lawrence Nyazema, and Mr. Batanai Matsika. We thank you so much for your invaluable insight in the past hour. Just a reminder, or for those who came in late, we are recording this meeting and then we will upload it on Morgan & Co's YouTube channel, as well as Morgan & Co TV on the Research app. So after this meeting ends, you can still have a look at the video, and you'll be able to see where you missed and get all the answers to some of the questions that you have. So yeah, thank you so much to the team, the panel. I appreciate everyone for joining in. We hope that we have more webinars like this and continue learning from people in the field and respected people that know that can give us more advice and give us more light in these new investment products that are coming into the market. So thank you all for coming, and I wish you a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.